Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joel Amadon.
And I'm Ann Monroe.
And this is The Teacher's Journey, Mile Markers on the Road to Better Teaching, a podcast series where we discuss stories of teacher development.
This podcast is brought to you by the University of Mississippi School of Education and is an Amadon Planet production. All right, so we have a special guest here today. Joel,
Another guest. Another guest. They keep coming. They keep coming back. This is excellent. We haven't run anyone away yet. No, this is good.
That we know of. But this is a special guest because it's one of our former colleagues, Dr. Marianne Parker, who has worked with us in the past in the Department of Teacher Education and is now at the university in the Department of Writing and Rhetoric, which is exciting. And she's coming this year. Let's see, Marianne, this is your first year back at the university, or?
This is my second year back.
Second year back at the university. Prior to, she returned to high school to teach, I guess, middle school and high school, right?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yeah.
Okay. So she'll talk a little bit about that, but we're so happy to have her back and back on campus too. So that's terrific. So Marianne, thanks so much for joining us. We have sort of a start to our podcast where we do a countdown. So we're going to do a 3, 2, 1 with you. So if you'll start us off by thanking 3 teachers who have shaped your development as a person.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you both for having me here today. I'm very honored to be a part of this podcast, especially with the two of you who have been very influential throughout my career, particularly in higher education. But starting out, thanking 3 teachers, fortunately for me, that's kind of a hard task because I had some great ones. But if I'm thinking about elementary school, I'd have to say Ruby Ann Kincaid, who was my 6th grade teacher. She was someone that we admired both as a person and as a teacher, but particularly I remember that she had us create a Proverbs book, which I still have somewhere, where we were to read the book of Proverbs in the Bible. I did go to a Christian elementary school, and we were able to pick any verse that we wanted to, illustrate it, and talk about what it meant to us. And so looking back, as a teacher, I think about, wow, she was really kind of firing on all cylinders there with student choice and writing and then drawing and, incorporating all sorts of things there. And then I'm thinking about my secondary experience. My 9th grade year had so many wonderful teachers. And Joel, you will appreciate this, not being originally from Mississippi. But back then we didn't have air conditioning in our schools.
Oh,
and
wow.
So I think about the fact that these teachers were willingly going into this environment and staying before and after school to help us. And I had a 9th grade teacher named Miss Drew, who was an English language arts teacher. And she was just wonderful in doing things like pulling in what is your favorite song, and express the lyrics and then explain it to the class, tell us why, in addition to reading classic literature. And for reasons unbeknownst to me to this day, she chose 4 students, and I was one of them, to take to Memphis to see short stories in play form. And that just was really a standout for me.
That's awesome.
And then, of course, in my graduate school experience, I always have to thank Rosemary Oliphant Ingham. She was the legend. What?
The legend.
The legend, exactly. And to me, the key to the reason she is a legend is we were not only listening to the content of what she was saying, but we were watching the way she was delivering the content, and as grad students, and we were trying to emulate that in our own classes. And to me, that's the highest compliment you can give, and to give a teacher of any sort.
That's great. Thanks, Marianne. All right. So we've done the 3, now the 2. Recall 2 reasons or events that led you to become a teacher.
So I went a different path to become a teacher. I'm actually an alternate route certified teacher. I began my career, my undergraduate degree is in marketing. And so I began my career in business. I actually had relocated. When I relocated, I took a job, just a temporary job in a school. And once I was there, I wasn't there in any sort of instructional capacity, but I was in elementary school, a K-5 elementary school, and I fell in love with being at the school, being in that environment, working with the teachers. And I was offered a computer lab instructor position. And I took that position and worked on my alternate route certification. So I stayed there for 2 years until I actually became certified as a secondary English language arts teacher.
Nice. Terrific. And so with your marketing background, Marianne, I'm wondering if you could market me as a country music star, and I'm going to steal your elementary school teacher's name because it's amazing, Ruby Ann.
I know it.
I can't stop thinking about that. So maybe with your marketing skills, you can market me and my with my new budding country music career as Ruby Ann Monroe. I'm just putting that out there.
I would be thrilled to do so. You know, I hate to say it, but we know that there's power in the double name, right?
Absolutely. And you know my singing skills.
That's right. I mean, I'm almost scared to try any sort of marketing because it might make you too much of a star. And we want you to stay humble.
Maybe I'll just stick with my career that I have now with teaching. I think we're good on that. That's great. But I just love that name. I say cheers to Ruby Ann. That's what I say. All right. So now we're now at the 1, 3, 2, 1 final countdown, Marianne. Here we're going to talk what we're here to talk about. Place 1 mile marker on your path to better teaching. What artifact would you use to represent your mile marker? What's one of those things in your journey to be a teacher that really has had an impact on you and your development as a teacher?
So I chose as my artifact the inquiry project that I completed as part of the 2010 University of Mississippi Writing Project Summer Institute. And just to give you a little bit of context of where I was in my teaching journey at that time, I mentioned that I was in the computer lab and I did that for a couple of years. And once I became certified, I actually accepted a position teaching 8th grade English language arts. And I held that position for 5 years. And then at the end of my 5th year, I started my master's program at the University of Mississippi in curriculum and instruction. And then I also changed schools. And so I accepted a position teaching 10th grade English in another district. So my 6th year of teaching was a year of first for me because it was my first year of teaching 10th grade. It was my, in the content that comes along with that. It was my first year being in a high school environment. It was my first year in a new district. And actually, it was my first year teaching on a block schedule. So I had a lot of issues that I was exploring. And I knew that I was at a time of my practice that I wanted to grow not only as a practitioner, but as an overall professional. And I was very fortunate that I had 2 teachers on my hall who were also going through the same program as I was, the curriculum instruction program. And they told me about the Summer Institute, the Writing Project Summer Institute. And I thought, well, that sounds very interesting. It's growth as yourself as a writer, growth as a teacher. So I was very excited about it, very enthusiastic. It was a summer program, as I mentioned. And when I began, the culminating project was an inquiry project. And so you were able to choose just anything that you wanted to explore as an educator. So you were asked to reflect on your practice and think about not only your own instruction, but think about and challenge the pedagogy that is behind what you were doing on a daily basis, right? And so I was very interested in exploring student voice and developing student voice and the power of writing and how to make certain that our students, particularly at-risk students at that time, were able to use their own voice and help them develop that voice in writing. And so through this inquiry project, I was able to look not only at my own practice, but look at, and not only look at best practices, but what is the research behind what we are doing? Why are we doing this? Why is it even important in the first place? And so the end project, we completed a paper, but then we also were to present it just as you were in a professional development environment. And that was my first time completing that sort of presentation. Once I completed that presentation, I had more confidence in what I was doing. And then I was asked to do more presentations, and that opened the door to really a long career in having the opportunity to present at conferences or to present in professional development opportunities and things of that nature.
Well, and teaching teachers, and thinking like that's, where I met you is we're doing that together with the EDSE 400 and all that stuff. But what it was cool in your story there in just setting up this artifact in your mile marker of your development is there's a lot of counterintuitive stuff. I don't know. And maybe, someone that's hearing the story for the first time, like hearing that, like all these things are happening in that, like basically my teaching experience is being turned upside down, all these changes that are happening. And yet you and your colleagues decide, no, we're going to go participate in this institute. Right. It's like we're going to go develop as versus like, hunkering down and just trying to, like, oh my gosh, there's too much chaos. Like versus like, no, we're going to use this maybe as an opportunity to spark some development. Like, all right. So, and then thinking about the population of students that you're most concerned about here, some might say, okay, at-risk students, let's just concentrate. Let's get them the skills. Let's, make sure that, let's simplify it versus like, no, let's think about how they can use their voice. And then those other things are going to come along with that. And so like, creating the motivation and think like, I have a way to use my voice. And now I have this necessity to figure out, you to use the grammar and all that other things that go along with it. It's like, I don't know, there's all these things that are happening that it kind of stood out with yours. And also too, the Writing Institute, I'm sure that they had a bunch of things that they wanted you all to know, but it's like, they also knew that, hey, go find something that you want to learn more about. And that's going to be the motivation. And we're going to get exposed to all these things. And then they're your guide on the side and for it. And like, again, another great model for how to teach teachers is to help them move towards this goal that they've set for themselves. Like just lots of good stuff there.
And it's kind of mirrors what you said Ruby Ann did for you, right? Providing this idea of choice. I mean, everything's being echoed in your story from, the things that you really saw as benefit of the great teachers that you highlighted at the beginning, that providing choice, providing an outlet for your creativity, what you were motivated about, like Joel said, that brings that motivation piece when you provide choice. And here you are at this institute providing choice. But also to kind of talk about, back up what Joel's saying is that you're entering this at a time of, you just mentioned all these things, different things happening. And I think that's kind of a good message for us as teachers and also to some of our pre-service teachers that when you are in the middle of working hard, sometimes in a way, it's a great time to keep going. It's sort of like it's almost like, I don't know if you ever look back on your life and you're like, wow, I had so many things going. I got so much done during that time. It's almost like a good time to put the gas on, you know what I mean? Because you're already in that mode of go, go, go. And I'm already changing things and things are already new. So what else, it's almost like put your, foot on the accelerator and just go. And this idea of saying yes to new things, even if it's a busy time, sometimes you're in that mode of go and it's a great time to do that.
I wonder, Marianne, too, like going with that, like, we're in a pandemic, and like all the different things that had to change with our instruction and like thinking about like how a lot of people, it was a way it was that catalyst to get better at things. Like, how could I be a better user of technology, or could I be a more mindful user of technology, or even to think like, how do I facilitate interactions? And now even coming back to a face-to-face, like I'm better at that now because I've been thinking about those deeply because of this catalyst. So I don't know, there you go. Thanks for sharing. That was good.
Yeah. And then one thing too, like to connect this back to your growth as a teacher, this particular mile marker you're talking about, this thing that happened at the Inquiry Institute where you did this inquiry project, at the Institute. Why is this mile marker to you, if you could narrow it down to like the most important aspect, why is this so important to your growth as a teacher? What do you think it did for you in terms of growing as a teacher?
Well, that's so many different ways I could answer that question, honestly, because it was that influential in my practice. It was that influential, not only in my practice, but again, overall for my development as a professional. So Ellen Shelton is the director of the writing project, and I have become colleagues and friends with her through the years. And before, she is very big on explaining to new institute members that the importance of, for instance, thinking partners. And before I entered the institute, I didn't know what a thinking partner was. I just knew that I needed one. So basically, it's mentoring other teachers and just having someone that you can call and say, hey, I have this idea. I'm not sure what this looks like in the classroom, but this is either a concern or just something I want to try. And instead of having someone saying, well, I just don't do that. We don't have time for that. Or, we've never done it that way before. It's more of a, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Let's talk it through. That has been, for me, one of the most influential parts of my practice is to have people like that surrounding me, because I thrive in a collaborative environment. I mean, I do, because I need somebody that I can push those ideas on. Talk about my ideas, but then I need somebody to push back. I need somebody to push back and look at it from a different perspective, so I don't have like that tunnel vision. So just in of itself, from that sprang me like starting when I was at Indiana University Southeast, starting a mentorship, for younger teachers and things like that. And just understanding the importance of mentors. And then, of course, practically also, if you want to look at, that is when I started presenting. And you could argue that those presentations, again, have led to me not only presenting, but those presentations, I guess you could say, have helped me seek out more professional development, because when you are researching, if you want to put in a proposal, you're looking at that research and you're thinking about what does this mean? And then you're putting together an overall presentation. So it kind of is a big circle. It just kind of keeps you developing as a professional, no matter what stage of the career you're in.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you're thinking about, because you're saying some words that I know are part of these standards that we're asked to, meet with our pre-service teachers. If you look at this mile marker, why is this mile marker important to our field? Can you tie it to the standards? We use the INTASC standards in our pre-service program, Interstate Teacher Assessment and Support Consortium standards. And those standards are something that we're constantly making sure that our students are meeting. How would you tie this mile marker to those standards, this particular inquiry project that you completed?
So I would look at the instructional practice standards, standard 7, standard 8. So not only planning for instruction, which is standard 7, but then also instructional strategies, which is standard 8. And what I really like about what standard 7 says is where it says the teacher plans instruction that supports every student in meeting rigorous learning goals. So again, it's not this idea that we have 4 students that can learn in a rigorous, we can, that we're elevating to this ideal, but we are reaching every student so they can reach their fullest potential and achieve it at their highest level. And then standard 8, which talks about the instructional strategies themselves. And it's, again, using a variety of instructional strategies. And then also, and then you both know this is near and dear to my heart, is professional responsibility. So standard 9, professional learning, ethical practice. We have an ethical obligation to constantly reflect, to constantly be thinking about how are we best serving our students? How are we best serving the profession overall? So not only is that a professional responsibility, it's an ethical responsibility.
Yeah, I love that idea of it being an ethical responsibility that we don't often think about. We talk about reflection and how reflection is such an important part of teaching and that cycle of learning and lifelong learning, but to think of it in an ethical way and the responsibility we have as teachers to do that to improve our instruction for our students, I think is really important.
Well, and also too, just thinking about going back to your response to like what's the best needs from my students. I want them to figure out how to own their voice and represent their voice in the world. I mean, my guy, it's almost like a tear could roll down my cheek. I mean, that's a beautiful thing that I want my teachers or my kids' teachers to have for them, and like, think like, how are they going to exist in the world? Like, there's a reason behind why to know the grammar and stuff in order to represent your, so like an ethical responsibility to my students. Like that's beautiful.
So Mary Ann, talking about, with our work with our pre-service teachers, we always have them articulate their philosophy of education. We do that early in the program, and then we have them revisit that philosophy and kind of, it becomes, they shape it over time. If you had to, boil down your philosophy to what we call a pocket-sized philosophy, just a couple of sentences about what you feel is most important about teaching and learning, what would be your pocket-sized philosophy?
So my pocket-sized philosophy would be based on social constructivism, Vygotsky, which is communication and social interactions are vital in the educational process. But as is student choice, and educators must engage all students with academically rigorous instruction and understanding all students have significant opportunities for individual growth, and then to support those students in achieving maximum growth.
Great. And how do you think that your mile marker that you talked about, the inquiry, is reflected in that philosophy?
So again, the communication and social interactions, if I think it's important in the educational process for students, clearly it's important for me as a professional, right? So I'm having those social interactions. I had those social interactions through my peers when I was going through the Summer Institute, and the two colleagues that I mentioned, Mary Kylie Ruff, Stephanie Risher, were very instrumental. First of all, they're the ones that told me about the Summer Institute. But then we commuted together. We talked consistently about our practice, and that was a springboard for us to do that. To this day, I'll call Mary Kylie if I have a question that I need to run something by, hey, do you think this will work for my students? So I think that's very much a reflection of that process. Understanding that rigorous instruction and understanding that all students can achieve, completing the research behind the developing student voice and how does that work and why is it important for students and how to best do that. But not just how someone coming in and saying, here's a strategy that will best do it. Me understanding the whys behind it, me understanding the research behind it, psychologically, socially, academically, all of those things that, culminate in a student's experience.
That's great. Thank you. Now, one of the last things that we do on the podcast, Mary Ann, is Joel and I kind of talk about some of the resources we have that might go along with what our guest is talking about. And so knowing that a writing person was coming on the podcast, and then also something you said made me think about sort of a seminal text for me as a teacher who taught language arts in the elementary classroom. And then you actually said this in just a minute ago when you were having a discussion about when you went to the Writing Institute for the first time, you started thinking, oh my goodness, I've been doing this in my classroom, but I really could be doing this.
Right.
And so one of the things when I came to the university to study as a graduate student, I had Dr. Cindy Lee. And I don't know if, Mary Ann, if you knew Dr. Lee or she was here during your time, but she was really influential for me. And one of the books she introduced me to was Reggie Routman's Invitations. And so that book, I had just come from the classroom and teaching my third graders. And so I knew what I was used to doing with them. And then I'm reading what I could have been doing with them or what, all of these potential things. I think that's just, we'll put a link to that. That's an old school book that's just still so relevant with a lot of the great ideas about how to get students writing across the curriculum and lots of stuff about student choice and motivating students with their writing and letting them have ownership of what they're writing about. And it just sort of made me think differently about what I could be doing as a teacher, kind of like you mentioned earlier about how the Institute has done that for you, the Writing Institute. So that's definitely a resource, that meant a lot to me and I think could be something that could be inspirational for somebody else. Joel, do you have any resources? I know with thinking about mathematics, I don't know if you've got anything about writing across the curriculum or any things that have been influential for you.
Well, I was just thinking of the springboard of a professional development opportunity that's not only done in isolation, but it's done with others, right? And so you're just encouraging listeners out there, and it's, undergraduate students to experienced teachers to whoever, like those professional development opportunities, whether it's like the regional, like we have Mississippi Councils of Teachers of Mathematics, we have the Mississippi Association of Mathematics Teacher Educated. I can do the math ones, but there's a version for every subject area. And then we have, again, opportunities on campus. The Writing Institute is still happens. Is that right, Marianne? Do you know?
Yeah, so it's the University of Mississippi Writing Project, and each year there is a summer institute for people who want to, to start this experience. And
we'll put links in the show notes for that. And then like the Center for Math and Science Education has lots of professional development, but like not only like taking advantage of those things, or like, because there's tons of free experiences also as well. Todos Mathematics for All has lots of great online math experiences and chats and things like that. But to do it, I think, is grabbing that partner, that thinking partner, and and even as could be as simple as, hey, I want to read this book. You want to read it with me? And let's make sense of it together as it relates to our teaching. And I think that is just something to encourage folks. And then also too, once you experience some of those things, then think like, well, what do I have to share with the world too? And so because if you are an experienced teacher, you've figured something out that needs to get shared. And so there are venues out there to share that. And so just encourage people to do that. And if you need help with that, we're here at the University of Mississippi. We can help you share that as well, find you an outlet. So
excellent.
I think that is so important, that what you just said about being able to share, that every teacher has something that they can share. And sometimes teachers forget that there are outlets for teachers to go out and share their expertise, their personal expertise.
Yes. And sometimes it's the one. Oh, sorry, Ann.
Go ahead, Joel.
I was going to say, and sometimes it's the ones that they're too busy thinking about their own teaching and improving it that they need that. And like, I'm thinking about this idea of shoulder tapped, like, hey, this thing you're doing is special. You got to, don't just let it just sit here. Let's share it. Let's share it beyond your classroom. So yeah, that's great.
Well, speaking of sharing, I know Marianne has to leave us now because she's going to teach. So she's going to share with her students, is what we do as teachers, sharing all the time. So we want to thank you all for tuning in to the Teacher's Journey, mile markers on the road to better teaching. This episode may be over, but the journey to better teaching continues. Please subscribe to the podcast so you are notified when the next episode is ready for you to listen. And if you like what you hear, please rate and review the podcast. You can also share the podcast with someone you feel may be interested in these stories of teacher development. And also, thank you, Marianne, for sharing a portion of your journey with us.
And thank you to all you listeners out there for taking the journey to better teaching. This world is a better place because you have used the gifts you have been given to teach others.